Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to interview Betsy Mayotte, President of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Today, we're speaking about how to pay for grad school. Betsy, thanks so much for joining.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Grad school is a big investment, so before we get into the details, do you have any advice on what financial factors students should consider before deciding whether or not grad school is the right move for them?
I do. Sadly, the times of education for education's sake, and this breaks my heart, unfortunately, that's just not the world we live in anymore. So you really want to do a return on investment analysis when you are considering entering grad school. Get an idea of how much debt you're going to have to take on, what's the average starting salary for the career that you want to enter into. Not only how much debt will you be taking on, but what will that mean for a monthly payment? And actually do a budget based on the average starting salary for that career. And then see if the numbers make sense.
Great. So free money is always better than borrowed money. So before we talk about student loans, what other financial aid options are out there for aspiring grad students?
So there's not as much free money for grad students as there is for undergrad, but there are grants. And depending on, especially if you're in the maths or the sciences, there are still quite a few scholarships out there. There's some great free scholarship searches that I would recommend. You don't need to pay for help with that. College Board has a good free scholarship search, and finaid.org also has a good free scholarship search, as well as Mapping Your Future. All three of those organizations are nonprofits, and they don't charge for their scholarship searches.
Great. So now let's move on to student loans. How can students apply for and receive federal student loans for grad school? Is the process similar to undergrad?
It's so similar, it's the same.
Okay.
First, you fill out the free application for federal student aid. The other benefit to that is if there are grants available, or if the school has perhaps institutional scholarships, they're going to start with the FAFSA to award those as well. And then once you filled out the FAFSA, if you do need to take out, you're going to get an award letter from the school. Part of the award letter is going to be any of your loan eligibility, and then you go from there.
Great. So what type of loans are available, and do students get to choose which type of loan and how much money they borrow?
Yes, and yes, and no, but sorta. And what I mean by that is graduate students can also get Stafford loans, and that should be the first loan that they max out on before they hit any other loans. Grad students, unfortunately, now can't get subsidized Stafford loans, only unsubsidized. So you should also get in the habit of paying at least some, if not all, of the interest on a monthly or quarterly basis so that debt doesn't grow. If the Stafford loan doesn't cover your cost of attendance and you need other loans, they can get a Graduate Plus loan, which is also unsubsidized. And there's no limit on that. The limit is the cost of attendance minus any other aid. But I just caution you, just because you can borrow that amount doesn't mean you should borrow that amount. One thing I didn't mention in your last question is another option for getting a graduate degree and reducing the cost and reducing the borrowing, although it might take a little longer, is try to find an employer with tuition reimbursement and take advantage of that tuition reimbursement. Maybe don't go full time, you work full time, but don't take on the debt, but essentially get that degree for free. And that's related to the loan borrowing too. If maybe the tuition reimbursement isn't enough, maybe you can at least use it to reduce the borrowing that you have to do.
Great. So when would you advise students to take out private student loans?
Never.
Never.
Stop. Never. I've been working with student loan borrowers for longer than I care to admit to you. And there's very few borrowers I haven't been able to find a solution for, but all of those borrowers have been private loan borrowers. Maybe they can get a lower interest rate, but that doesn't do you any good if you can't afford the payment. And you end up getting co-signers involved that maybe they can't afford the payment. I just had an email this week from someone who co-signed like 200 grand of their child's private student loans, and they're retired and their only income is Social Security. and now their child can't pay the private loans. So they're getting the collection notices and they're getting threatened with a lawsuit by the lender. So private loans to me are a never.
Great. So we talked about scholarships. I know there are a couple other options, such as becoming a TA for students to get money off. Can students assess these options before applying to school?
Well, I mean, when you're determining the school you're going to attend, those are things to look for. Do they have ways to reduce tuition? Or if it's a out of state school, maybe you can be a resident assistant and you don't have to pay room and board, which that can really rack up the cost. So those are all things that you can look for ahead of time before you even apply at the institution.
Great. Well, thanks, Betsy, for taking the time to join us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And for more interviews like it, please subscribe. Have a great day, everyone.